Good day, class. So for today's lesson, we will discuss rate and the relationship of ratio to rate. But before that, we will recall our previous example about the cross product rule or the cross product property na ginamit natin para ma-solve yung ating first example about proportions. So what is the cross product property of proportions? The cross product property of proportions states that the product of the means is equal to the product of extremes. You can find these cross products by cross multiplying as shown below. Okay, so we have A over B is equal to C over D, or A divided by B is equal to C divided by D. That is in a statement of proportionality, meaning the two ratios or the two fractions is proportion to one another. So we can now apply our cross product by multiplying A times D or D times A, and multiplying B times C or C times B. So the cross product will result to A times D is equal to B times C. Therefore, we can solve for the unknown. Yan yung ginamit nating property, the cross product property, to solve our previous example in our previous lesson about proportion. So let us now proceed to the relationship of ratio to rate. So what is rate? So we define rate as a word often associated with a ratio is rate. So in daily use, the term rate usually refers to show how fast one quantity is changing in comparison to another quantity. So for example, if we remove a liquid in a container, suppose that a liquid has a unit of liter. So if we remove, the rate would be liter per equivalent time. For example, liter for equivalent of second, liter per second or liter per minute. So those refer to a change, the rate of change in a specific things or quantity. So a common example is the speed of the vehicle. So the speed of the vehicle is sometimes constant, wherein you can drive your own motorcycle in a constant rate of 20 miles per hour. But in some reason or in some situation, there is a possibility that a vehicle has a rate of change now. So if we try to accelerate our vehicle, we can increase our speed. Therefore, we can also increase our rate of change. So which is distance traveled per unit time. Yan yung definition natin with our rate, that is the distance traveled per unit time. Okay, so however, a rate in mathematics is something more general. So for example, rate problems can be solved by using the formula D equals to R times T. So where D is the distance and R is the rate, and T is equal to time. Okay, so if we solve for our rate, that is distance over time or distance divided by time. So we have an example. Jason is driving across the country for the first 3 hours. So the initial time is 3 hours. He travels 60 miles per hour. That is our initial rate. And for the next 2 hours, that is our next given time with relative to 72 miles per hour if he travels 72 miles per hour. Assuming that he has not stopped, hindi siya tumigil sa pag-travel niya, no? So, pag-drive niya ng kanyang sasakyan. The question here is, what is his average traveling speed in miles per hour? Since that we have the initial time of 3 hours relative to the rate of 60 miles per hour. And we have also a given of the next hours or additional hours, which is 2 hours relative to the given rate of 72 miles per hour. Okay? So in the first 3 hours muna tayo. He travels around 180 miles. No? Paano natin makukuha yung 180 miles? So, by means of using our formula, no? Distance equals to rate times time. As you can see here, 3 hours, 3 times 60. So, 3 represents the initial hours and 60 is the initial rate. Okay? So, we multiply that by following the formula. Distance equals to rate times time. Okay, so 3 times 60 is equals to 180. Okay, in the next 2 hours, yan. So in the next 2 hours, ilan naman yung distance niya? So distance equals to rate times time pa rin. So 2 hours times the given rate, which is 72 miles per hour. So the resulting is 144 miles. So we have to add the distance, the total distance. So 180 miles plus 144 miles. The total distance earned is 324 miles. And since that we are required to solve for the average traveling speed, we will divide the total distance by 5. So, paano natin nakuha yung 5? That is also the total number of hours. Okay, so total number of distance divided by the total number of hours earned. Okay, so 324 divided by 5 is how much? That is 64.8 miles per hour. How is the concept of ratio can be used in business? So we have a situation here. So due to COVID-19 pandemic, you thought of putting up an online business to have an additional income. You decided to try to bake banana cake at home based on the recipe you have researched online. The banana cake recipe calls for 2 cups of flour and 1 cup of sugar. Then from this, you decided to double the recipe. So, in our first ratio of ingredients, we have 2 cups of flour is to 1 cup of sugar. If we double, it will become 4 cups of flour is to 2 cups of sugar. So this is now a bright example of a ratio and proportion. So the given 4 cups of flour and 2 cups of sugar is a representation of proportion. Okay, so let us define first what is a ratio. So a ratio is the comparison of two or more quantities. So we have A is to B. So two or more quantities, we could say A is to B is to C and so on. To express ratio, we use fraction, colon, and the word to. Okay, let us have an example. Express the following ratios in similar unit and in lowest term. First given, we have 50 minutes to 2 hours. Since the 50 minutes is less than an hour, and we would like to avoid fractions in our ratio. So let us convert the hours to minutes instead. So as we all know, 1 hour is equivalent to 60 minutes. So here we have 50 minutes is to, let us use colon. The 2 hours in minutes is equivalent to 120 minutes. So we need to simplify this by dividing both sides by 10. So we have 5 minutes is to 12 minutes. So this is now the new ratio. Okay, our next item, express the ratio 2000 grams to 1.5 kilogram. Here, let us convert first kilogram to grams. So take note that 1 kilogram is equivalent to 1000 grams. So here we can have 2000 grams is to 1500 grams. So let's simplify this by dividing both sides by 500. So we have 4 grams is to 3 grams. So the concept of ratios can also be used to make wise decisions. So in this given problem, in the dry goods market, one bakery sells pandesal at 6 pieces for 18 pesos, while the other bakery sells 10 pieces for 25 pesos. Which bakery sells pandesal at a cheaper price? So it is stated in the problem that yung unang bakery has 18 pesos for 6 pieces. So 18 pesos is to 6 pieces of pandesal. And sa second bakery, we have 25 pesos for 10 pieces. Okay, so how will we know which one gives a cheaper price? So we can do this by dividing 18 by 6, and then we get a value of 3 pesos, which means per piece is 3 pesos. While for the second bakery, we have 25 divided by 10, that gives us 2 and 50 centavos per piece. Okay, so based in the price per piece, it shows that the second bakery sells pandesal at a cheaper price. Another example, a banana cupcake recipe calls for 2 eggs for every 1.5 cups of flour. Can these two quantity of eggs and flour can be expressed in the same unit? The answer is no. Hence, this can be expressed as a rate. A rate is a special type of ratio used to compare quantities being compared that cannot be expressed in the same unit. Other examples of rate, we have a taxi travels at an average speed of 70 kilometers per hour. An office secretary can type 120 words per minute, and a painter consumes paint of 1 gallon of paint for every 50 square feet of surface. So these 3 examples are the following examples of rate wherein we cannot express one unit the same with the other unit. Here is a sample problem using rate. As a proofreader, Elisa reads 3 pages of manuscript in 15 minutes. So at this rate, how many pages will she able to read in 45 minutes? So first, let us try to express this in ratio. So it is stated here that 3 pages is to 15 minutes. Now we are looking for the number of pages that she can read in 45 minutes. So from 15 going to 45, to know the number of pages that can be read for 45 minutes, we just have to multiply both sides 3 and 15 by 3. So 3 times 15 gives as 45, and 3 times 3 gives us 9 pages. Okay, so with this we can now conclude that Elisa can read 9 pages of manuscript in 45 minutes. Okay, for our next topic, we will learn how to find the missing term in a proportion. So we will discuss also about direct, inverse, and partitive proportion after this topic. We'll also show step-by-step process on how to solve or find the missing term in a proportion. Okay, so as we recall our previous topic, we can also say that a proportion is the statement of equality between two ratios or fractions, which means that the two fractions or ratios involved in a proportion are equal. Each part in a proportion is a term. A term is referring to all numbers in a ratios. Okay, so example of a proportion, 2:7 is equal to 6:21. Okay, so now the first and the last term, or the first number and the last number, are called the extreme. And then the second term or the third term, or the second number and the third number, are called the means. These numbers are in proportion because the product of extremes and the product of means are all the same, which means they are equal. As you can see, 2 times 21 is equals to 42, and 7 times 6 equals 42 also. Proportion can also be right or expressed in fraction form. So pwede natin itong isulat just like this. 2/7 is to 6/21. Ngayon, kung nasa fraction forms ang dalawang ratio, para ma-check kung ito ay proportion, all we have to do is to do the cross multiplication. Kapag pareho ang cross products, ang dalawang ratio ay proportion. Okay, so for our next example, we will find the missing term in the proportion. So we have given the proportionality of 9:3 is proportion to 126:8. So as you can see here, yung missing term po natin ay yung 8, no? So we will try to solve for our value of a, that is our missing term. So based in our previous discussion, we have to equate. So in order to find the missing term, we have to equate the product of the means with the product of the extremes. So the product of the means is 3 times 126. Okay, and the product of the extreme, yung mga numbers na nasa labas, that is 9 times a. Okay, so to get the value of our a, we have to divide both sides by 9. Okay, correct, by 9. So divide both sides by 9 in order to solve for our missing term. So 9 in the right side will be cancelled out. Cancel yung 9. What remain is 3 times 126 over 9. So what is 3 times 126? That is 378. Okay, 378. So therefore a is equal to, we could say that a is equal to 378 divided by 9. Okay, so 378 divided by 9 is how much? That is equal to 42. So our missing term therefore is 42. This is our final answer. So we can now conclude that 9:3 is equal to 126:42. This is our final answer. If a photocopying machine can make 40 copies in 1 minute, how many copies can it make in 8.4 minutes? So here we have 40 copies is to 1 minute is equal to the number of copies, which is our x is to 8.4 minutes. So our x is our missing term. Take note that in writing the ratios in a proportion, make sure that you are following the same order. So ibig sabihin, dapat parehas na copies to minute yung left and right side of our equation in order to avoid mistakes. Here we have the product of the extremes, which is 8.4 times 40, that is 336, equals 1 times x, which is also x. So it means to say that the photocopying machine can have 336 copies in 8.4 minutes.